Hi, in this session we will learn how to configure the web recorder in Rapise. I am Dennis, Principal Software Developer at Inflectra. If during or after this session you will have any questions, please use the chat window for this advanced topic. Let's get started. To show you the features of the recorder, I am going to use a real-life application. Welcome to the Microsoft Dynamics 365 for Sales. It has so many familiar blocks that you will find in almost any business application today. It has the main toolbar, the breadcrumbs, the sidebar where you may switch to a specific module, a table with data, and the secondary toolbar with buttons. And if we will start a new form, it has a bunch of fields and combo boxes, and it even has a process breadcrumbs. So there is a great chance that the application you will be testing resembles Dynamics 365 for Sales to some extent, with all its menus, toolbars, and forms with fields and data. I have an empty test that uses default web recorder configuration, and I'm going to record a very simple scenario. So I click on Leads on the sidebar, and then click on New to start a new lead. And now I will fill a couple of fields. So I click on Topic and enter the value. Click on First Name, enter it, and the same for the last name. And I click on Job Title and click Finish to stop the recording. Then I add the recorded steps to my RVL spreadsheet. Let's see what we've got after the recording. First, I must say that object names captured during the recording are not very self-explanatory. So it's very hard to distinguish where we have my topic field and where we have first name and the last name field. They are pretty much the same. Let's also take a look at Xpath Expression for one of these elements. And here I also see that the ID attribute that Xpath is using also contains some digits and actually looks very suspicious. So it looks like something that is generated every time we have a new application built or every time we have a new application session. So something dynamic that we cannot rely on. So to see what we have after the recording, I am going to replay my test, but on a different browser. I am switching to Firefox, and I have this application also opened in Firefox. And now I will run my test. So hitting play, clicking on lead, on new, and now Rapise should enter the value for topic field, and it does not happen. So let's see why. So the execution is interrupted, and we can see that Rapise did not find the first object. Obviously it was the object for my topic. And this is a normal situation when someone records the very first test for an application, and many get scared and drop their automation projects. I'm going to show you how to improve recording experience. In Rapise, we can configure the web recorder, so I'm going to Files, and I want to add the recorder configuration to my test. So I'm choosing Create and Web App Profile JSON. And this is the default web recorder configuration. Let's take a quick look what we have here. The web recorder configuration starts with a list of attributes to use for generating Xpath locators. Then it has a list of classes to capture and some advanced things like anchors and handlers. And the web recorder configuration is described in great detail in the documentation. Now I am going to fix the problems I've got during recording. First, we will fix object names. So I'm going to our RVL and I'm going to look at Xpath Expression for the topic field that Rapise captured during recording. And here you may notice that Rapise captured area label that has value topic and a title attribute that has select to enter data value. And obviously this select to enter data value was used to derive the name for the object. So this is how default configuration works, and we cannot change it because in some other application it may be a different situation where area label will contain something auxiliary and the title will contain the real name for the field. So what I'm going to do is change our recorder configuration. And to do this, I'm scrolling to handlers section, and it has element name handler, and this handler is used to fine-tune element name generation during recording. So by default it does not affect the default algorithm, but we can change it. So here the element that we have in parameters for this function, this is the DOM element, and we can read tag name for it, and we can analyze its attributes. And to read the attributes of an element, we can use underscore get attribute function. So I'm going to uncomment the stub that I have here. And this is actually what I really need. So I want to read the area label attribute, and if it has value, then we will use it for object name. Now I'm going to analyze what attributes to use to identify elements reliably. To find out what attributes we can use potentially, I am starting the web spy. And I want to see what attributes our topic field has. So I'm entering the tracking mode and tracking the topic. And it is selected in the DOM tree. And here in the middle, you can see its properties. And obviously, if we compare the ID value for this topic field with the ID value that we captured during recording, they will be different, and here is the difference. And also I noticed that here in the list of attributes we don't see the title attribute. This is interesting. And what we also have here, there is a very interesting attribute, data ID, that contains some very meaningful information. So it says that it is a subject field control. So something really resembles ID of an element. And I think that we can use this data ID to reliably find fields and other elements in this application. So what I'm going to do is I'm canceling and closing the web spy. And in my web application profile, first I'm going to exclude from recording any ID that contains digits. To do this, I'm adding an attribute exclude here to this JSON file and to the array of attributes, specification of attributes. And this exclude field should contain a regular expression. If the ID or other attribute value matches such a regular expression, then it should be excluded and not used for a locator for an element. So here I will use the regular expression /d. It means that if Rapise will see at least one digit inside the value for an ID attribute, Rapise will not use this value for generated Xpath locator. And also I'm going to add here the data ID attribute. So we found that this is a good one, and I'm adding it to the list. with this recorder configuration, Rapise will capture data ID value for those elements that have this attribute. Let's again take a look at Xpath Expression for our first element. And here you can see the title attribute that was used to derive the name for it. And here it is captured. Select to enter data. And let me launch my web spy again and connect to Firefox and track the topic element. Here we go. And if we look at the list of attributes for topic in Firefox, there is no title attribute here. It means that sometimes the server may not render title attribute, and we should not use it, at least for input fields or maybe for some combo boxes. And we can adjust this in web recorder configuration as well. So I'm closing the web spy and returning to recorder configuration. Scrolling down, and here we have skip attribute handler. What it does, it receives the DOM element node and it receives attribute name and value, and using some algorithm it may decide if this attribute is okay for this node to be used to generate Xpath expression or not. So let's see what we have here. So I'm going to uncomment this part as well. And here in this example, we are reading the tag name for the node for which we are generating Xpath during recording. And we are looking if it is an attribute with name title and the tag name for an element is text array or select or input. This is actually our case. Our topic and first name and last name fields, they have tag input. And so here we return true. It means that let's skip this title attribute and not use it to generate Xpath expression for such an element. And what we also have here, the if attribute is text, and if attribute, and there is an attribute data ID, and if there is an ID attribute, one of those two, then do not use text. So the text has special meaning. This is an attribute that is not a real attribute, and it is derived from the inner text of an element. So this configuration is fine, and our title fix is complete at this point. Now I'm going to clean my test and do the recording from scratch. So configuration is complete, and let's clean up our test. So I'm just removing all my objects from the object tree. So I am removing all objects that are inside the specific window here. And here I will delete all the steps that have been recording, and my test is ready for the new recording. The last step is to switch back to Chrome. I start recording. Same scenario. So I do pause of my recording to bring Chrome to the foreground, and let's actually go to the home page, to the initial state, and resuming recording, and I start interacting with the application. Same scenario, clicking on leads, starting a new lead, and then I click on the topic. You can see now that the topic was added to the list of objects here, so our names are fixed now. Okay, so entering my topic, and entering the first name, the last name, and clicking on the job title. And you can see that all the object names are okay now. So I'm finishing and adding steps to RVL. Let's see what else has changed. I'm going to take a look at Xpath Expression for the topic object. So let's see what attributes the locator is now using. So it does not use ID that contained the dynamic values, and it is now using data ID, which is very nice and clean, and it is using area label, and I don't see the title attribute here, so it is not used anymore for this type of an object. So looks very good and much better than was recorded at the beginning of this session. So, and now I'm going to test and see how the playback works. And I'm going to run it on Chrome browser first. So moving the application to initial state and hitting play. So let's see how it works in Chrome. So works very well. Everything is entered in the fields. So, and the next step will be to check the same on Firefox browser. So I'm just changing the browser here to Firefox. And in Firefox, we also need to go to the home page. And here in Rapise, I'm hitting play again, and our test should run in Firefox. Yeah. Works very good, and also all values are inserted into fields where they should be inserted. Yeah, perfect. Now I am going to show a few more tricks you can use with the recorder configuration. Sometimes it makes sense to use inner text of an element to generate Xpath expression for it. Let's take a look at the new button that we pressed in the application in our scenario. Here it is. If we take a look at its Xpath, it is binding to area label attribute of this button. Imagine that we had a case where there is no such area label, but there is inner text of an element that we could use. So if I will launch the web spy and we will take a look at this button, tracking mode, here we go. Here is the tracking button, and we can see that it has inner text, which is new. How to tell Rapise to use this inner text to generate Xpath? So I will show you how to do this. So canceling the web spy and returning to Rapise. I am now going to web configuration. So I will change this area label to text. Text is a special alias for inner text of an element. So it's not the name of an attribute of this element like all other values that we have here, ID, name, data ID. Text is a special alias for inner text. So now I'm tell Rapise not to use area label, but use inner text. So I will start recording again, and we'll click on this new button. So clicking on it, finishing recording, and I will insert this step on a new sheet. So appending to end. And here you can see that another button was captured, a new one. Let's find it in the object tree. Here it is. And if we will take a look at its Xpath, here it is. it is now not using area label, and it is using text of the button. Many applications have objects that simply do not fit any rules defined in the web application profile. And for such objects, we may simply rewrite Xpath Expression, assign a specific Xpath expression for them, and even provide name for such objects. So let's consider an example. Here in the leads table, we have this more comments button in the top right corner. So let's record it with the current web app profile that we have. So I start recording and click on this button, and you can see that Rapise recorded an object with the name button. It's not very meaningful, and let's finish recording to see what Xpath we have for this object. So appending to end again and showing Xpath. Here we go. So it has data ID, overflow button, and it has type button. So imagine that we don't like this Xpath at all and we want to provide some other Xpath. So we can do this with web application profile. So I will copy this value and we'll go to web app profile. It has a special section, anchors, and I will add a new anchor here, Xpath, and the value of Xpath that I just copied, and I may provide the name for this object. Let's name it more comments, and I will change it a bit. I will remove this part, so we will see that the recorder will record such an object with this Xpath next time. So saving my web app profile and start recording again, and clicking on this button one more time. You can see now in the recording activity that different name was assigned to the object. It is now more comments name, and I finish the recording and append my steps to the end. And if we will take a look at Xpath for this object, it is now different. It does not use type button anymore, and it is exactly the same as we defined this Xpath in the web app profile. Okay, we created configuration for the recorder. How to use it for every test that we will be creating for our application? Should we copy it to every new test? The answer is no. The recommended way is to define a web app profile and use the test where you define it as a root test or parent test for all your test cases that you are going to create for your application. So I'm going to Files View, and I will create a subtest that will implement a test case. So creating the subtest, and let's give it a name, create new lead. And here I will set the checkbox have own set of objects, and uncheck this one. Your choices may be different. Creating the new subtest, and this subtest should use web application profile we defined in the parent test. So now I will open this subtest in Rapise and will do recording. So it is connected to Firefox. Let's use Firefox for recording. And I will record the very same scenario. So clicking on leads, clicking on new, and now I need to enter values into fields. So my topic, and entering the first name, the last name, and clicking on job title. So now I finish recording and adding my steps. You can see that object names are okay. And let's see Xpath Expression for this element. And here we can see that date ID is used and ID is not used, and title attribute is not used, so Xpath expressions are fine. It means that web app profile from the parent test was used during recording. Thanks for watching. If you plan to test a web application, I recommend to spend some time and become familiar with the web recorder configuration, or web app profile, like we also call it. Time that you will spend tweaking web application profile in the beginning of your web application project will pay off in the future and will save you a lot of time. I am Dennis from Team Rapise at Inflectra. Thank you for joining me today.